Helps if I turn the microphone on. Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for some more Forza gameplay stuff, force feedback, all that jazz. Today we're going to be doing just a little bit of solo drifting in this cool little S15 Sylvia that I've built and tuned up. And it's kind of cool because it's kind of a throwback to my YouTube thumbnail, which was a screenshot I took from Forza Motorsport 3. Unfortunately, it's not quite the same cars. That car that was in Forza 3 was the top secret S15, but this does have the same paint job going for it, and I quite like the look of the S15 as well. But also today I'm going to show you guys where the UI interface is at that First Plateau has put together and he's still working on. I know it's been some time since I've touched on any of the EmuWheel stuff, so I'll show you where that's at the moment. Still more work to be done on it. There's no set release date, as it's literally just one man doing this job, so he's doing it at his own pace and it will be released when it's finished. But anyway, back to the car. It's quite a cool car because I've tuned it up to be sort of a devil's car. So if we have a look at the performance index, it is bang on 666. So it's A class, red car, red class, 666. I thought it was pretty cool. But before we head on to the track, I'll quickly show you guys the UI or user interface for EmuWheel. So just try and block that out so it's not too confusing. Okay, so this is what it looks like so far. We have 4 different tabs up the top here. We have our force feedback mixer, and here we can change the force feedback scale all the way up to 5. I'm running at 0.75, which is 75%. So 1.0 would be 100%. And we have minimum force, which is a correct minimum force setting. So if I set this up to, let's just say 50, which is pretty extreme. 50 is 50% of the, I think it's 50%, I'm pretty sure it's 50%. I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that's, so 50% basically means the force feedback scale will not send a signal that is smaller than 50% of the signal. So if there's anything that the force feedback produces that's underneath that, it will literally just boost it up to 50, and anything will be played as a 50% force that's underneath 50. So that's what a proper minimum force setting does, and what it does is removes dead zones from the lower end of the force feedback. So if you have a wheel that has a big slack spot in the center, you can raise the minimum force so you can tell the steering wheel that you don't want force feedback values beneath this certain threshold. So that's really cool. I'm running on 0 because I don't really need that much of a minimum force. Sometimes I run about 0.5%, 3 to 5% or something, but I'm not running any at the moment. And then we have all these other beautiful settings. So mechanical trail and pneumatic trail, we can individually adjust the scale of each of those. I'd probably, when it releases, I'll recommend adjusting those on here where you can actually see the mix between the two. We have the road feel force, so this scales the overall force of the jolts that you get from all the bumps and things on the track. Curbs force is the strength of the vibrations that come through the wheel when you hit a rumble strip. I might back that down a little bit, 3.5. Downforce effect is just a basic downforce effect that we applied to the force feedback. So the faster you go, the force feedback sort of gets a steady increase in its maximum force. So, I mean, you can play with that. We've got it set at a default of 0.18, which is pretty generic for like a sort of race car, but you can play with that. But you don't want to go too extreme on this because you will probably get high clipping values when you go really fast and into the high sort of loaded corners. Stationary effect, this is another cool thing that's just been implemented. So when the car's not moving, we now have a heavy damper on the wheel. So I'll quickly demonstrate that for you in the game. So car's not moving. Whoops, got to make sure my damper's turned on the wheel, because if it's not, yep. So that's the damper. So heavy damper when the car's stationary, which then disappears when the car's moving. So it kind of gives you that sort of car park steering. So it's got a bit of weight to it when the car's not actually rolling, which is really cool. You can also adjust your standard spring and damper settings as well in the static conditions. So if you adjust these ones, this will tell the general force feedback that you always want to have some sort of spring and damper, whereas the stationary effect is only in effect when the car's not moving. And then we have some vibrations. So there's some road feel vibrations and tire vibrations. The road feel vibrations are mainly for areas which trigger the vibration effects, like the cobblestone areas or certain grates and things that are on the track that have been sort of labelled in the track coding that it initiates the vibrations. And then we have tyre vibrations, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. So this is the part that I really like. This is where you can tune the torque curves of the force feedback, and with a visual graph that updates as you change settings. So at the moment this is the setting I'm using for drifting. I'm not sure if you can see this yellow line here, but that is the pneumatic trail, and this blue line here is the mechanical trail, and then the green line is the sum of both of those, which is the actual force feedback output. So the slip angle across the bottom here, 1.0, is peak slip angle. So when we're at maximum turning potential, the force is slightly lower than around about 60 or 70%. And then it'll gradually drop off. The drop off isn't very severe because I'm using it for drifting. But let's just say I wanted to make the drop off a lot higher. I'll tune my pneumatic torque curve so it has a more significant drop off, something like that. So you can see the drop off is going to be much more severe, and that's a really cool thing about this this tuning option, is you can really fine tune everything to be exactly the way you want it. And obviously you can normally we wouldn't recommend adjusting the mechanical trail parameters because they're pretty much static. You can adjust the final value of it in the scale, which is the same as this one here. So the scale will just change the scale of it. So more scale, and then you can tune basically the scale between the two. So if you want to have more, you can have more mechanical trail and less tyre feel, or you can have more tyre feel and less mechanical feel. Just depends on what sort of flavour you're after. But yeah, you can literally tune this this tyre curve to whatever you want. Give it different shapes. So even if you look up some real world data, you can actually create a custom curve that will be similar to what a real life tyre can do. The default values I think we set, which was just a sort of generic pneumatic and mechanical torque curve that we found online, and they feel really good for base settings. And then over here we have a nifty little setting here. So minimum tyre force plus peak slip angle will basically limit how far the force feedback can drop off. So if I put this at about 50, it will basically tell us that we don't want the force feedback to drop off past a certain point in the pneumatic curve. So you can use that. So if you want to have a really severe drop off but you don't want the force to be able to go into a negative value, basically you tick this, and if it's on 0 it means it will not allow the force feedback to drop below 0. If it's unchecked, this will produce a force that will actually be opposite, like what I experienced in the Horizon 4 demo with severe understeer. So when you start understeering past, about 1.5 150% past the peak slip angle, the force will actually try and turn the wheel further into the direction the car's turning. So that's what that little setting there does, just prevents the wheel from producing negative force feedback values depending on which way the wheel is loaded. So we'll just put that back to the setting I had, and we'll uncheck that because we don't need it. And this suspension parameters is kind of like a different sort of road feel setting. So if we use this, we can basically, it's just a slightly different version of road feel. If we go to the road feel tab, we have a whole heap of settings we can change here. We can change the minimum force of the road jolts, the maximum strength, the curb force, which was the same as what we had in the mixer tab, and phase value for, oh whoops, wrong one, sorry, and the dead zone. So you can add a dead zone, oh pardon me, to the road feel forces. So if you don't want the wheel to be constantly jerking, it's a bit of foul language there, constantly jostling, I should say, in the middle, if your wheel has like a very sort of tight force feedback system, you can add a slight dead zone so you don't really feel those big jolts sort of directly in the middle. And then we have surface rumble parameters. So this is again tied to your vibration, I believe. So you have your base strength and your maximum strength. And there's all the vibration parameters there as well. We won't get too much into those. They're pretty straightforward. Your vibration scale, minimum and maximum strength. And then you have your period, duration, phase, and dead zone as well. Then we have tyre vibrations, and this is one part I really like as well. In the standard force feedback, I turn vibration off almost all the time because I don't like the way the vibrations are done, because basically you have no options over what vibrations are sent to the wheel. You get vibration if you understeer, or if you spin the rear tyres, or anything like that. It will send vibration to the steering wheel. And the way I have this set at the moment, and we've added options so you can send rear tyre slip and spin ratio, whatever you want to call it. So when the wheels are spinning, which is longitudinal, so if we tick this box, if we start spinning the rear tyres, the wheel will start to vibrate, or if the rear end starts to slide out, it will start to vibrate. I don't like those because the rear wheels are not connected to the steering geometry, and I don't think those forces should be tried to be conveyed through the steering wheel. Those forces would be more suited to like a motion rig, or if you had like vibration or butt kickers or something on your rig. But obviously some more basic vibration settings there, but we have all these tunable parameters for the tyre vibrations in there on their own. So the main ones I'm using is the front. I just completely ignore the rear because I don't use them. But we have lateral, so when the lateral slip angle is at 1.2, the wheel will start to vibrate, and it'll stop vibrating once it goes past 7.0, and then we have a minimum and maximum value that you can adjust, and I've set the longitudinal for the same. So if I'm starting to lock up, it'll start vibrating the wheel just as I go past the peak's spin ratio, or is it? I can't remember the name of it now. It's late, I'm getting tired, so excuse some of my miscommunications. But basically when the wheels are spinning, so when the tyre's going sideways, there's a slip angle where the contact patch twists under the tyre, and the slip, I keep getting confused now. I'm pretty sure it's slip ratio, is when the tyre is rotating, it actually rotates either slightly faster or slightly slower than what it's moving over the surface. So when it's doing that at 1.0, that's at its peak slip ratio for acceleration or deceleration. So once I go slightly over that peak is when I'll start to get vibrations through the wheel, which indicates for me when I'm either locking up the tyres, or if I'm in a front wheel drive car, if the front wheels are starting to spin, the wheel will start to shake a little bit. and again you can set the minimum and maximum values for that as well. But that's a quick, or wasn't really that quick, sorry if I dragged on a bit, but an overlook of all the user interface for all the force feedback settings that we currently have. And something else, so basically all these settings update in real time as well, so as soon as I make a change here, I don't have to close it down or restart it. I can just jump straight back to the game and those settings will be applied instantly, which is really awesome. So I'll just put this back to my original setting. And the other thing that we have implemented now is, I'll just cross this off, don't want to save that. It's not functioning yet, but you'll be able to switch between Emu force feedback, game force feedback, or disable force feedback, which is really cool as well. So we'll go onto the track and do a few quick drifts. So I'm still running the SR20 engine in this car. I've actually gotten quite used to using the sequential stick in the drift cars now, whereas I'm used to just use the stick shift all the time. I'm even tempted to try and make my handbrake into a vertical one rather than a traditional beside the seat handbrake, because I have been working on for a while now. It's taken quite a long time. I'll just quickly show you guys. I built this bad boy for First Plateau as a gift for all the hard work he's put into helping a lot of people out. It's just an analog handbrake that eventually, once it's finished, will just plug straight into his pedals and he'll be able to use it on any game that supports an analog handbrake. So I've built it with a Fanatic magnetic sensor. I don't know if you can see it in there. There's a little magnet on that pivot, and there's a little grub screw on here which allows the magnet to rotate under the circuit board. And it's just a nice little design. I've done a few little nice neat sort of custom bits on there. But the one thing I haven't been able to do yet is add the connector, because the connector for my pedals, which are Club Sport V1s, uses this small little 4-pin connector, but his one uses something more like what's found in the shifters, which is what they call a RJ11 or RJ12 cable. I've been trying to ask around to see if anyone has a Fanatic handbrake that has both these connectors and can compare the wiring diagram for me, just so I can get this wired up so he'll be able to plug it in and it'll just be plug and play. If any of you guys have a Fanatic handbrake and have both of those connectors and are able to test which wires go to which pins on the little 3.5mm jack, and if someone would be able to do that, it would be a big help so I can finally get this finished for First Plateau and get it sent to him. And then once I get that finished, my next project will be, because I've upgraded my brake pedal, I don't know if I've actually shown that yet, but basically I'll see if I can add some pictures in here for you guys. I've converted the V1 load cell to a V3 load cell, and it's working really nicely for me at the moment. And I've got the brake dial adjuster moved up to the steering wheel now, so if I want to adjust the brake pressure, I don't have to reach down and fiddle with the bits. I can just do it right there on the pedal face. But back to the handbrake, once I finish First Plateaus, I will be modifying. I've already started to modify. I've cut this down slightly and sort of cleaned it all up, and this is going to be a load cell handbrake piece that I will eventually modify into my existing handbrake and make it into a vertical handbrake, which I'm quite interested in giving a try. I've never really used one, but I've gotten quite used to having things right close to the wheel. Let's do a couple of laps here and then we'll call it a day. Oops, let's take out all the cones. But yeah, coming back to this custom force feedback again after playing the Horizon 4 demo, I really missed it. it's just so much more connected and intuitive and customizable to exactly how you want, and it works flawlessly, and you just feel literally everything. It's a little bit too much angle, missed the apex. We don't have a lot of power, and it's only a 4-cylinder, so we've got to use the gears. Make sure we clutch kick when we drop off boost. Gotta love the transitions, they just feel so connected. I can actually throw the car into the corner, real aggressive, and the wheel can still keep up and do what it needs to do. Whoa. Big bump there as we come up onto the bank. I'll try one more lap, see if we can get a wall tap in here somewhere. Oh, that was close. Can we link it? Oh, I don't quite have the go. Doesn't quite have enough juice. Can't stay sideways like a crab. Just mungy like I used to do in LFS, just let the wheel do its thing. Whoops, that's the grass. See if we can tap this tyre barrier. I did it before I started recording. Miles off it. Try and get a wall tap coming out of the exit onto the bank. It's quite hard in this car with not quite enough power. Just gotta make sure we get the line right. No. Try one more time on this entry to get the wall tap. It's right there. In sim steering we can do nice and quick transitions. Let's see how quick we can do a transition here. Super aggressive. And just cut the grass a little bit. Needs a good mow. Super quick. Whoop. Grass pulled me straight then. Oh, that was a slow transition. Alright, let's try this wall tap again. That's a better line. Oh, it's just so hard to try and push it wide enough. Try this one more time. No. Not gonna happen. Can we link it? Can we link it? Handbrake it. Right on the ripple strip. That was not a bad effort. Just cut the grass at the end there. And this side a bit too. Oh, let's get that side. Terrible entry line there. Tap the tyre. Sticking out. No. Oh, we've got to try and get at least one wall tap in here before we cut it out. Oh, come on. God damn it. Alrighty then. Guess that's gonna wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.